Welcome to our September Higher Ed Action Team call, and specifically, welcome to our Climate Career Connections call. This call happens only once per quarter, and it's a really exciting opportunity to learn from some working professionals who have made climate a part of their career, or their whole career in some cases. And we're really excited to be joined by some exceptional professionals tonight. We'll get to them in just a second. And it's also an opportunity for us to let them know a little bit about what we do and why we're such passionate climate advocates. So keep sharing in the chat a little bit about yourself and what actions you've taken this past month. If you were with us last month for our August Higher Ed Action Team call, you might remember that we were brainstorming about what we wanted to do, kind of heading back to school. What are our favorite activities? For example, I share that I really love getting the free food that's always handed out on campus during the first couple of weeks. And then we shared some of that inspiration in a Jamboard. And some of you I know, because I followed up with you individually, have actually made good on those promises and started talking to people in your classes, reaching out to professors, which is really exciting. Oh, thanks, Philip, for sharing your picture of you with your CFD sign. Love it. Really exciting, active first couple weeks back on campus. So for those of you who are just heading back to class, welcome to fall. It's going to be a great semester. In addition, last month we shared a little bit about our re-envisioned higher ed action team, including all sorts of new meetings and resources. Some of you joined us for one of those new meetings just a short while ago, our new member orientation. So I hope that helps you feel a little bit more grounded and welcomed into this space. And there's also so many more great things. We're going to have Emily O'Keefe share a little bit about what's going on with the CFD movement at the end of the call, so you can also stay connected to what's going on in that side of our higher ed work. So with that, I don't want to delay any further because I'm just so excited to have Caleb and Anjali with us tonight. Genuinely two of like the coolest humans I've actually gotten to meet in person. As I read through some of their bios, I think you'll understand why. So we'll just get right into it. So Caleb Rogers works as a sales director at Voltus, and he is a city councilor in Williamsburg, Virginia. Shout out to our William and Mary peeps, who are the reason this connection happened circuitously at a conference that Caleb and I happened to be at, but it was really, really great fun. As a sales director at Voltus, a distributed energy resources company, Caleb focuses on the PJM energy grid, highlighting potential earnings available through demand response programs for a variety of industries. And I'm sure he'd be happy to explain what that all means for those of us who are not electricity and energy grid geeks. As I mentioned, he also serves as a city councilor for the city of Williamsburg, which is part of why I've invited him to join us tonight. He oversees the city's $117 million budget, ensuring a balance between short-term services and long-term capital projects. He spearheaded the development of a comprehensive climate action plan just last year, which quantified emissions and implemented effective carbon reduction strategies. So it's really, really wonderful. He's also a philanthropist and a long-distance cyclist, which I did not know until he sent me this bio. And he holds a bachelor's degree in public policy from the College of William and Mary, hence the connection. So welcome, Caleb.
Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate it. Good evening, everyone. Should I go bio now, or should we introduce Anjali as well?
Let me go ahead and introduce Anjali first, and then I'll prep you. I'll set you both up for the bio for your intros. Wonderful. All right. So Anjali Boyd is a marine ecologist, an educator, an entrepreneur, a wearer of just about any hat you can imagine, including elected official, because she wasn't busy enough doing her dissertation, apparently. She's at Duke University, completing her PhD right now, and she's a Dean's Graduate Fellow in the Nicholas School of the Environment. In addition, she's a National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellow, which is one of the premier ways to get your dissertation funded. She's a Ford Fellow and a National Geographic Explorer. Her ongoing research focuses on developing more efficient and cost-effective restoration and management practices for vulnerable marine ecosystems, and her Instagram is a great joy to follow if you are interested in the marine bio. She's published multiple scientific papers and reports, and her work has been recognized by the Smithsonian, NOAA, the National Academy of Sciences, the Aspen Institute, and so much more. So coincidentally, there's an Aspen connection between the two of you too. Anjali is fiercely committed to increasing the representation of women and ethnic minorities in ocean science fields and elevating the voices and contributions of students and early career scientists. She's held a variety of different leadership roles with prominent organizations and institutions. She's a graduate of Eckerd College and has held leadership roles as well through the Ecological Society of America, and is the director of INVA Technology, where she works to combat the underrepresentation of women and ethnic minorities in STEM fields through educational entrepreneurial programs. So very, very busy person. And on top of all of those things, a few years ago, she decided to run for and won the election for the position of Durham County Soil and Water Conservation District Supervisor in Durham, North Carolina. So really excited to have you both on, and I'll turn it over to both of you. Those were really impressive bios. I know you both, and I'm a little bit starstruck. So what I would love for you to do is humanize yourselves a little bit. Tell us a bit more about yourselves, what doesn't show up in the bio, so we can get to know you a little bit better. And let's actually we'll start with Caleb, since you're off mute already.
Sure. Yeah, it sounds good. Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for the invite tonight. You asked us to humanize ourselves, so I'll start. I don't think I know anyone on the call except for Stephanie from our meeting and Anjali from our talk before, except for Philip, who reached out as a William & Mary student and was involved with Carbon Fee and Dividend, but then also getting the CCL chapter on our campus kicked off. So I hope it is humanizing for me to say that I only graduated in 2020. I recognize that the freshman class that just moved in here is the class of 2027, which sounds shockingly far away for me, but I definitely feel like I live right across from the college, like I wasn't all that long ago in college myself. So I'm so excited to get to join CCL. And Emily, I see your note too. Thank you very much for reaching out, and I hope you're enjoying William & Mary. To add a little bit of color about maybe two things that were touched on in my bio. The first was representation locally in the city council here, and then the second was my work at Voltus. So I guess the motivating factor of why I want to get up every day and work on these issues is, generally, I think we as young people, we feel really impassioned about helping our local community, but we also, especially out of an interest in addressing climate change, recognize that these issues are international. And so that's sort of the two focuses that I wanted to have. I want to be able to address climate change from an international level, but then also try to benefit my local community. And between City Council and Voltus, I feel like I can do that. So on council, my main motivation of running was the city of Williamsburg. For Emily and Philip, you all would know this, but for those who have not been through, it's about 15,000 people. About half of those are students, and our elected body is, from an age standpoint, not as representative of the age that our average citizen may be. So I wanted to run to make sure that we had a younger voice on city council. And also because we didn't have a great stock of affordable housing locally. For any housing geeks out there, I would love to dive into some policy talk, but especially because we didn't have, I think, an ambitious plan from sustainability standpoint. And I'm excited to share some updates that literally are hot off the press. They were just presented in front of council 4 hours ago. And then on Voltus, I'll wrap up in saying that while I wanted to serve locally for city council to address issues here in Williamsburg, Voltus was my effort to get involved internationally, and doing so by helping decarbonize the energy grids. Particularly, we're focused in the US and Canada, and my interest area is the PJM energy market, which is probably best thought of as like the mid-Atlantic. So I'm excited to talk a little bit more about energy as well. I also just got back from a class on nuclear energy in Japan, which is really fascinating to get to learn from the Tokyo Institute of Tech about advanced nuclear reactors, which are coming online soon, and also they're decommissioning the Fukushima power plant. And as Stephanie mentioned, I do love to cycle. I did a big trip about 2 years ago to cycle across Virginia and tried to benefit the Chesapeake Bay by doing so. So I raised some money for doing that big cycling trip. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. Anjali, I was joking with her and Stephanie before the call and how much more they are academically gifted than me, and certainly successful. So I'm excited to hear more about you and excited to join the panel tonight.
Thank you so much, Caleb. It's great to have you. Anjali, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for the amazing introduction, Steph and Caleb. I am really excited to hear about this energy, because I'm not an expert, but I love hearing updates on that side. So I'm super excited to hear some of your updates. From my side, I guess I'll try and simplify a little bit. I do a lot of different things, but I think it really kind of boils down for me, at least to 3 things: building community, protecting our oceans, and increasing equity. Those are kind of my like foundational pillars and my why behind the work that I do. And I've always kind of told myself, especially after I decided to run for office, that I'll never tell myself no to like a position, or I won't say no to anything, especially if I'll do whatever it takes to fulfill those goals that I have. So if that means running for office, if that means working academia, whatever that looks like, I'm willing to do whatever that takes, because those are the things that are really important to me. Very similar to Caleb, I grew up in Durham, North Carolina, but I went off to college in Florida and decided to become a marine scientist. And if you're not familiar with Durham, we are 3 hours from a beach or any type of ocean. And so I struggled a lot in undergrad trying to figure out, because I've always kind of known I wanted to go back home eventually and like be able to give back to my community in the same way that they have given to me and pretty much raised me into the person I am today. And so I was really struggling really throughout all of undergrad, trying to figure out how the heck can I help my community? Can I give back to my community by studying marine science? And like, we're literally 3 hours from the ocean. And so this position through Soil and Water came about, and I'm happy to talk about that in more detail at some point in the conversation. And it was really all the things that I was kind of studying. So natural resource protection and management, all of that, but when it comes to a aquatic or soil or environmental conservation perspective, and not necessarily like the ocean or the marine resources. And so it was really easy for me to apply those same concepts that I was learning about, I was doing research about, in all these different areas to a local concept, and trying to take that same information and apply it locally to my community to help develop solutions that will help us prepare my entire community, but especially vulnerable communities within our city and our county for the consequences of climate change. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you both. I love how you both come from really, really different backgrounds, have lots of different motivations and things that you fill your days with. And yet at the same time, I notice this common theme between the two of you of really wanting to give back to your local community, even if like some other parts of your life are much more focused on kind of the international and global scale issues. Wanting to find a way to give back to your community was really, sounds like what drew you both to run for elected office. But I can imagine that's a pretty intimidating thing to do as a student or as a recent grad. So my first question for you is like, okay, so you had this motivation, but how did you like finally push yourself to say like, yeah, I totally am the right person to run for this position? What was it that officially like gave you that kick in the pants and threw you off the ledge? Anjali, how about you first?
I don't know, I'll be honest. And I don't know that even through the entire election process, I was very confident that I was, this is my calling. If you knew me before I ran for office, you would have known like politics, anything. And that was literally never anything I thought of, imagined, wanted. That wasn't on the table. I kind of despise politics for a lot of reasons, and I'm sure most young people do. And so it's really, and there was plenty of times throughout that like process of running for office that I like almost was like, I might drop out. Because it was just so foreign territory. And then there was also so many things that come with running for office that I just was so naive to and wasn't prepared for. And I think the thing that really kept me going throughout the whole process was really my team. Like that was like the thing I was most proud of, if anything, throughout that whole campaign, was that when I decided to run for office, I was very adamant that I was going to have a team of folks who were young like me, were raised in Durham or were educated by the public school system. And so my entire team was under the age of 25 when I ran for office. And that was like the thing that kept me going, because every time I would start to think or get frustrated or want to quit, I would like I had a whole team of people that, you know, I grew up with, that I've known for a while, who are working their tails off to help me get to this, you know, to reach this goal. And so that's kind of what kept me going, because there was tons of self-doubt throughout that, I don't know, what, 6-7 month period of running, especially because my undergrad degree is in marine science. I have never taken any type of political science, no, like nothing. And so it's just very new territory for me. And so lots of questioning my decisions after making it, for sure.
Oh, you made it through, and obviously the voters saw something in you. Caleb,
Yeah.
how about you? Why did you finally decide to take the plunge?
Yeah, Anjali, I thought that was so well said. I really resonate with a lot of those reasons as well. Maybe to like echo two of them. The first is I tell myself this most days, and for people on the call too, like self-doubt is ever present in life, right? It helps us temper what we should and shouldn't do, but its existence doesn't mean we should not do something. So it's really daunting, certainly, to decide I'm interested in running for office, and then actually to deciding to. I also remember journaling back in 2019 as I was forming my campaign team that it's daunting, especially to ask for people to give their time to your endeavor. Because if they say no, they're kind of saying like, I don't know if I really believe in this. But if they say yes, you say to yourself, dang, I better not waste this person's time, right? So that self-doubt is always there. It was really motivating for me to, with that group of people that I had gotten to assemble as a team, get to see their excitement for some of the things we were running on. So sustainability was a huge one, and I'm excited to talk a little bit more about that. But we also had in the city, when I was running, only about 10 years of precedent of having younger representation on the local city council. And Emily may know this from the class I got to speak to at William & Mary, but just a few years before 2010, students were actually not allowed even the right to vote in Williamsburg. You could only vote where your parents or guardians lived, wherever you called home. So you actually could not voice your opinion at a place where you lived for 9 months out of the 12 months in a year. And it was because of some student activism that students gained that right to vote. So we felt like we had a lot of amazing involvement from the decade past of shoulders to stand on, and we didn't want to let them down. And then pretty quickly, I announced late February of 2020, and we all may remember what happened in the beginning part of that year and has still been ever present the last 3 years. So quickly, the campaign turned to really the one outlet for my team to have that wasn't extracurricular, because we were all sent home. And similarly, Anjali, to you, my campaign team was under 25, plenty of which the people involved were campaigning from their family's basement as the one thing they got to do outside of class. So I felt like I really owed it to them too, getting to see their strength and resilience and how hard they were working to try to do the same myself.
Yeah, it's really powerful, I think, for younger people to see someone who looks like us represented in these campaigns too. And it's really also inspiring to hear how it was inspiring to you. Like, that's why you ran, to be that person. And that's what got you through it. So thank you both for sharing those stories. Even after the election, I'm sure is a huge challenge, but actually just sitting in office, I'm sure is challenging. What's the toughest challenge you faced, especially as a young elected official? I can just imagine that can be really challenging for some governments to be open and accepting of a youth voice. It sounds like maybe Caleb, in your case, Williamsburg, had a few years of getting used to this idea, but what challenges have you faced?
Yeah, there are a number of challenges, but I think it has been they have not been presented to me from a distrust of the community, which I feel really, really grateful for. There were amazing students, both the team, the former candidates, the former council people who came before me, who researched deeply into the issues and got to know the community and basically showed us that a 22-year-old can actually serve adequately on council. So Anjali, I'm excited to hear your answer too, because you were really a groundbreaker in that way of bringing something brand new to Durham. Probably the biggest thing that I find as a challenge is that there can be a slower pace than what you would hope in a public position. And that is generally because the confines of our system are made so that you have checks and balances from the public, and you are not in an environment like a private company, which may decide immediately one day, is this endeavor worth it because of its ROI to the company? And so I'll give an example on this. I thought we had, in years before I ran, been pretty good for a smaller city as far as our environmental endeavors. We were rated as one of the more bikeable cities. We were given a platinum certification from the Virginia Municipal League for our environmentally friendly campaign around no charge recycling for our citizens in Williamsburg. But we hadn't really taken the next step. The next step being, let's get real about our greenhouse gas emissions. Exactly how much are we emitting per year? Let's be very serious about how we can, now that we've quantified, actually drive down those emissions, not through just public information campaigns about reusing your grocery store bags, which is important and I like to do, but about actually transitioning our city vehicle fleet to electric, or by putting solar panels on some of our municipal roofs. So that was something that pretty quickly into 2020, I started speaking towards and trying to get us to put long-term planning around. And now, literally just today, we have been given, I'll throw the link in the chat in a second, a report from a William & Mary student who over this past summer did research into how the city can drive down its carbon emissions from a greenhouse gas audit that I had gotten us to start in 2021. So while I would really have loved for us in 1 year to make this a #1 priority, at that time we were also dealing with COVID. We were dealing with important topics around racial equity. And so we didn't have the full force of the entire city staff around just sustainability. So it was a little challenging to learn initially that sometimes public work can be slower than you might hope.
Anjali, what about you? What challenges have you faced?
Yeah, that one. The same one. I think, yeah, I probably couldn't have said it any better. My biggest issue, and I've said this plenty of times, is government moves so slow. Especially if you come, like I came from academia and the private sector, where typically if there's a problem, I'm implementing, we're talking about it, we come up with a solution, we're implementing it. Just like that, right? No, government, there's votes, there's committee meetings, it just extends the life of everything. And so I remember the things that I was running on my campaign, the things that I wanted to do, as soon as I got elected, I was trying to implement those things. And I kept hitting roadblocks and I got super frustrated about it. I'm like, what is going on? And so it took me some time to realize, one, I was being overly ambitious for how slow, because of how slow government works. And two, it works there's lots of checks and balances for good reason. But that does make it hard to innovate and implement new things at pace, especially when you're dealing with staff who have been long-term staff, who are used to a certain process or system. So there's just a lot that you have to change when you're trying to make one change. And so that was probably one of my biggest struggles. I'm like, what now, in year 3, and I think in the last 6 months, I've really just kind of started to adjust to it and been able to more effectively get things done because I understand the systems. And that's also a big thing. I think maybe it was just because I didn't have a background in politics or in government, but the bureaucracy, how that works, who you need to talk to, all of that also takes a ton of time to kind of understand, because a lot of these systems and departments overlap and work together. And so really trying to get the lay of the land of, if I want to implement X, Y, and Z, how many different departments do I have to talk to? Who all is involved? That's a whole nother thing that you have to think about. And I think the last thing for me was probably finding my voice and being more assertive, especially because I'm younger. And so I'm typically, and in previous roles, I'm always in a room and trying to learn more, as much as I can. And I think even so, there was a certain level of imposter syndrome coming into politics or in government because of just inexperience all of that. And so being able to find like my voice, figuring out what issues I really cared about and which ones I really want to fight for was really important, because another thing that can happen is you get pulled in all these different directions to fight all of these different battles, right? And you can't do that. But it's super easy for that to happen, especially when you're young, you're new. Everybody just kind of come at you to like get you on their side for X, Y, and Z, which definitely, I think in like the first year kind of made me lose sight of like the things I really cared about. And I ended up in a position where I was like getting burnt out, because I'm like, I'm fighting all these battles. They're all important issues, but they're not the issues that I care most about. And so figuring out that and being assertive in the things that I care about has definitely been a learning process too.
Yeah, I can imagine it must be such a challenge, because you're balancing like being a voice for your constituents and the people who got you there, and also the people who like didn't vote for you. Like that's a reality. With also honoring yourself and what drove you to be there in the first place, and being an authentic representative of who you are and the community you hope to build. So that must be a really difficult balance to strike. I can imagine that folks have lots of questions, so I'm just gonna let everybody know, if you have any questions for Caleb or Anjali, you can start typing them into the chat, and we'll try to get to them. And I think I'm actually going to skip a couple of the questions that I had hoped to get to, because I want to open it up to people, and just go right to the last one I was planning to ask the two of you, which is, what advice would you give to a college student trying to decide, right now we're coming up on another big election year, local elections are happening every year pretty much, depending on where you are. What advice would you give to a college student who's trying to decide if running for office is right for them? And we'll start with Anjali.
That is a really good question. I think one, I guess I would say my biggest thing is knowing the community that you're trying to serve. Whether that be your hometown or somewhere that you now call home, whatever that looks like. I think understanding that that community in detail, the needs of that community, is probably one of the biggest reasons. One, I'm able to do the work that I'm able to do because of the relationships I have, but also probably why I got elected as well, because I had a huge support system in my hometown. And so definitely know the community, like understand that this is not a what you can get from the position type of position. This is what can I give to, and I think to the community, right? And so making sure you're in a place where you can do that, because I think there's another thing that young people should consider is like, there's definitely like, it's being in an elected official role, there's a lot of giving, but you're also young in the sense that maybe you're trying to climb your ladder, your professional ladder, become financially secure, all of that. And so that definitely, like, it's not the place that doesn't really, and being an elected official doesn't really align with that in all aspects. And so making sure you're in a position where you have the time and the capacity to actually give, and not doing so in not holding those positions in a way to like leverage them for something for you or your family or whatever. So really center in the community, because I think we have way too many elected officials who are in those positions simply because of the power and whatever that is, and are really playing games with people's lives and livelihoods. And so making sure you're in that space and you're able to give and serve is, I think, a really big thing that I would heavily contemplate.
Ditto. I mean, is like all I could say about that. Amazingly said. I have continuously tried to remind myself, in this kind of role, your time is the public's. I think my address is online somewhere. I know my cell phone is online somewhere. And so I get calls sometimes when I'm sitting down after a long day and just want to veg for a little bit. And it's someone with an issue which is for them really important, and it's their world, and you just kind of have to sit up and address their concerns. So I'd say, like, if anyone on the call is currently considering running or potentially will in the future, totally divorce yourself as you're thinking about the issue from any kind of idealism about like the pomp and circumstance of the office. Because one, that wears off mighty quick, right? I think my technical title is the Honorable Caleb, but I've never wanted anyone to call me that because your time is so much of the public's that you really have to, like Anjali said, ask yourself, do I have that space to really devote myself to a community? But I also maybe started talking about that self-doubt, and so I wanted to address that. It can be really daunting to try for a role like this, and it sounded like both of us, didn't really have that day where we said, okay, I'm 100% ready, let's go out and do this. So I'd say, as you're thinking about running or not, one day or now, convince yourself to do it by putting yourself in the shoes after the campaign, after the first couple months in office are there, and your real interest in digging into the issues and working with your colleagues and trying to be impactful. I think if you still decide, yes, I want to do this, and yes, I want to run, then everything else becomes secondary, like how to run a campaign, how to govern, you'll get there. But if it's the issues that make you excited to serve, then you'll want to get through the rougher stuff. And then maybe to that point too, because I'm on it, you'd be surprised how much of an asset it is by being a young person and campaigning. Like, both of us said credit to our campaign teams, which is true through and through. No chance I would have won without these amazing 12 students who are on my campaign team. It was also because of them that we were able to use data to be really strategic about everyone that we were reaching out to. And so we knew that any bit of campaign mail or messaging on Facebook was going to the exact right people. So as a campaign, it really helps to be a young person. I also think government is benefited from young people and our ideas. And I know that I have a better ability to engage on social media than my colleagues do, but it's also to educate on social media, right? So you can be innovative, certainly in governing and in campaigning. I hope that's helped drive down any self-doubt. But if for anyone who's really considering the issue, I'd say put aside any of the self-doubt and ask, is it the policy that you really want to work on? And if you decide you have the space to do so, then it's a decision you should feel emboldened to go ahead and try.
Wonderful. Thank you both. It's a huge decision, but it's also really exciting to see so much momentum all across the country, not only from young people who are running for campaigns, but also seeing people who are investing in young people's campaigns and really seeing that our voices are important. So thank you for both being such great examples of the power that that young people can bring into elected office and the transformative change they can drive. So you've got some great questions. For those of you who can unmute, I would love to invite you to just ask the questions yourself. So I'm just going to go in order. And Philip, that means you are up first.
Yeah. Well, I just want to say thank you guys for being here, and nice to see you, Caleb. So I'll ask my first question. How has your perspective on politics changed now that you're on the other side?
Much more respect for the process. I think you like, we both talked about sometimes government can work slowly, right? I don't think that's because any member of the city of Williamsburg staff goes into work and just ships it in that day. That they are all some very hardworking individuals. We have a structure which likes to work slowly in local government and at the state and federal level, but I know that that is so that you can have as many checks and balances as you'd like. And maybe also I'd say that I think politics at the local level, that it's not just my local level too, like that's people like the people in our soil and water districts, right? Making sure the water is clean and helping educate our citizenry about, at least as they do in Williamsburg, Anjali, like what you should do in a flood situation, how you can collect rain from rainfall to water your community garden. Like that has more of an impact on people's day-to-day lives than any amount of federal policy might. But that's where the emphasis goes, I think, unfairly. So at the local level, it really can be impactful, even if it's not one that is, exalted as much.
Yeah, I was actually going to say the exact same thing. I have a whole new respect for people in elected office and people who do it well. Let me say that. I've realized just how challenging it is, and it is way more gray than it is black or white. And so being on the other side of that has given me a new perspective just on how things work, but also it's carried on into like various other aspects of my life, from my research, from the education and other work that I do, because I have a clear understanding of like what this side of the aisle is dealing with, and like the barriers that hinder progress on this side, which is super helpful in developing solutions that are more accessible and easier to implement from a government perspective.
Wonderful. Great question, Philip. Thank you so much for asking it. Helen, I saw you had a question in the chat.
Yeah. Nice to see you, Caleb, for the second time today. And then my question was for Anjali, but you guys can both answer. Like, how do you know which battles to keep on fighting and which ones to let go? Whether it's like you could choose to do something like maybe find a more impactful way to go a different route versus, and like seeing that clarity in the moment, and also like for your mental health as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, I kind of come back to the things that I ran on and the things that are like my why. And not to say that I won't help fight other battles that aren't there, but those are my priorities. And that takes a lot of reflection and constantly reevaluating my priorities and where I'm spending my energy and my time. Because it's super easy to get wrapped into other battles, and not that they're not important, but they're not why I'm here. They're not the things that I'm the most skilled to tackle, which I also think is a big thing to consider when you're thinking about what battles. Like, I also think about which ones am I the most equipped to fight, and a fight in a way that is likely going to be more efficient or more productive than somebody else. Like, I think I have a certain skill set that makes me maybe better equipped to deal with certain issues than other people. And so I try to also gauge that in the sense of like, if there's an issue that there's a ton of people who really care about it, and there's a ton of people who could deal with that issue, maybe that's not the issue that I take up. Maybe I can support haphazardly or help when I'm called on. But the ones that I really spend most of my time and energy are the ones that, one, I think will have the greatest impact, but two, I have the skill set that I can do it with or without help, in the sense, because that's another issue too. So yeah.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say, Helen, you know, when I was elected, there were all a lot of ideas thrown at you after you're first elected, and you really do have to sort of stay focused, right, and almost have tunnel vision on the things you ran on. And like, maybe a good example of that is, you're a William & Mary student. Other William & Mary students at the time said, "There's nowhere in Williamsburg to dance. You should really get a disco in Williamsburg." And I said, like, you know, I'd love that. I really would. I think that'd be a fun place for us. At the same time, I don't know the first thing about recruiting that kind of business here. To Anjali's point, that's not in my skill set. And from an impact standpoint, I don't know if I would want all my social capital spent on that issue. So simultaneously, students are saying, we need to be more ambitious with our environmental policy. And that felt like more something that I personally wanted to work on and had a skill set towards, and could leverage, as you were in our city council meeting earlier today, providing public comment, the energy from William & Mary to assist with that. So yeah, you pick and choose your battles based on, just like Anjali said, where your skill set is and what you think would be most impactful.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, it definitely sounds like you've got your work cut out for you, because it looks like the William & Mary students would still very much like that disco, Caleb. So figure out who's got to make that happen.
I've got time left in my term.
So I think we have time for one more question, and I'd love to hand it over to David to ask what I think is a very iconic CCL question as a bunch of climate lobbyists in training. David, go ahead.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for all the insights you've given. I guess the question's written there, but I can also ask it. So given your experience in your respective positions so far, what is the most effective way to bring like a particular issue to, you know, council members, anyone like that you've interacted with at a local level? like, how do we really engage those folks and make connections with them? And what do you think is the most effective way to do that? Just being, like a typical citizen just living in that county, not really having much prior government experience, etc.
Yeah, I can kind of jump in. I saw actually a great example of this earlier. Best thing I could recommend is to reach out individually to those elected leaders and then stay in touch with them on things you're sharing. So as you meet with them about some idea, there should be takeaways that they're going to get back to you on, or questions of yours that they're answering, and you should stay engaged with them. A great example of this is Philip first reached out to me about interest in environmental policy in Williamsburg. And then Philip just recently connected me with some of the students that are still in Williamsburg and with organizations like Citizens Climate Lobby. Okay, I met with that student 3-4 weeks ago over a salad at lunch, and was telling him about the recommendations that I just put in the chat that we were going to receive today. And that student recruited Helen, you and your friends to come to the city council meeting today. So not only did we get that environmental report and suggestions that council will act on soon, but we then had 4 students, I think, individually then come up and say why that was really important for us to act on. 5 students. So not only did students have that individual outreach, but they were, from cultivating that relationship, then able to advocate in a public setting to show why our emphasis on environmental issues was important to them, our constituents, right? That was really impactful. So thank you to those students who did that. But I'd recommend, don't feel daunted about reaching out directly to your elected members. If they don't get back to you, don't be afraid to harangue them. You elected them, they should be getting back to you.
Yeah, I would also add, I mean, I think it kind of depends, just in the sense that different cities or counties operate differently. But what I will say is one gym I know that's very popular and works really well in Durham, is that there are tons of there's a city council and the county commissioners, right? People tend to kind of try to go directly to them. And especially if you're in like a mid-size or a bigger city, them getting back to you may or may not happen, because they get lots of emails. And so another really helpful way is to go through city and county committees. So we have like the environmental affairs board, we have like the housing, these like boards where city council members and county commissioners will elect citizens to these boards to serve and kind of report back to them on give them updated reports on the state of things in Durham. And so those are really good ways, one for you to get involved with those boards. You could become a member of those different committees that would then report back to the city council, the county commissioners. So those smaller government boards and committees and departments are really good ways, because I think people don't underestimate how much city council and county commissioners actually listen to those boards. They actually usually have one representative at all those meetings that report. They take all that information back to their actual boards, and that's what they discuss. And so if you have a whole committee that is galvanized around certain issues, it's super easy to get your points to the county commissioner, city council level, and to get funding behind those initiatives and things like that. And so I would definitely recommend you check those out, depending on where you are. But most mid-sized cities and larger cities have those the education board and all those different sub boards, if you will, that are really good launching places for bigger initiatives.
Well, thanks for bringing that to my attention. I didn't know they existed.
I think we're gonna have some young CCLers on those boards pretty soon.
Yeah, one of the people one of the girls that was on my campaign team, she actually ended up becoming the youngest person on a city council board after my campaign ended. At the time, she literally was on my campaign at 19, right when she graduated high school. And then the following year, her freshman year of college, she was serving on the environmental affairs board. So yeah.
That's so amazing. I know I said that would be the last question, but Karina asked a really wonderful question in the chat for you, Caleb, which I think would be valuable for everybody to probably hear. So would you actually mind just answering that out loud?
Yeah, of course. So Karina asked, like, students showing up, did that help, right? Which is, if you broaden that question, a great question, because it's like, where should we best put our time towards engaging with our elected officials? Karina, I'd say it is very early. That meeting did happen literally 4 hours ago, but yes, I did feel that it helped. I've seen that help before with issues unrelated to sustainability, but completely driven by student interest. Oftentimes at our local level, right, we don't have people who even come to meetings to provide public comment about some of the things that are sent in front of council that can be expending a lot of money or important for our long-term trajectory. So any level of public comment is very impactful, especially when you have 5 students who took time out of their day to walk to the city building and provide their comments outside of their class schedule. That was really impactful. And so I think it shows council constituents are interested in this, and it pressures them to move quickly.
Amazing. That's such a great story. What a great note to end on. I want to be respectful of y'all's time, but I also want to get a group picture, as is heat call tradition. So for those of you who are off camera, if you don't want to be in the picture, that's fine. You're welcome to stay off camera. But if you would like to be on, I'll just give you a second to turn on your cameras and get your prettiest smiles ready. All right. Got a couple, perfect. Awesome, okay. So smile pretty for the camera, everybody. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Awesome, it actually was able to fit everybody on one screen. Outstanding. Awesome. Thank you so much, Caleb and Anjali, for your time tonight, for just sharing your raw experiences as elected officials, as young people in elected offices in your local communities. It's just so wonderful to see the impact that you've made, and like, what great timing, Caleb, that you're just like fresh off of this hearing and fresh off of this report. Could not have planned that better. So thank you so much. You're both welcome to stick around for the last few minutes of our call if you'd like. But if not, I'd love to let you get back to your very busy schedules.
Thank you so much for inviting us. And y'all had some really amazing questions. So also thank you for all the questions. And don't be shy, reach out if you have other questions or want advice or whatnot. But yeah, thanks for letting me talk with y'all.
Yeah, and I echo that. And Anjali, I don't want to speak for you, but this kind of thing strikes me as something that we would be doing as college students. Yeah. So, for people on the call, like please know, whether it's running for office, getting appointed or elected to some kind of city board, as Durham has or as Williamsburg has, like that's around the corner for you all. We need the younger generation involved in these issues. I'll make sure to follow up with some of the video from today for students who may be interested in seeing what some local advocacy driven by CCL looks like. But thank you all so much for the questions and for your time.
That would be great. Thank you so much. And just to keep us moving, because we are short on time, we have so many great things happening this month. The first thing I wanted to just call to everybody's attention, if you are not aware, the diversity and inclusion action teams, all of our action teams, including our higher ed and youth action teams, is putting together our annual inclusion conference right now, which is a very, very exciting time of year, also very time consuming. But I want to encourage all of you to register if you haven't already. Very easy to do that. You can just go to cclusa.org/inclusion, and I'm putting that link in the chat. And if you have registered already, we have some great posts on Instagram and on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, which I will never get over. But if you just go to the CCL inclusion accounts on both of those, you'll see some posts featuring the speakers that are going to be on. And it's just really exciting. We're going to hear from people from all over the world about why it's so important to build community across boundaries. And of course, at CCL, we do that in a variety of different ways. So please do sign up if you haven't yet. That's happening this weekend. It starts off with like a pre-party on Friday night, which is always a great time. Normally great music involved. The playlist for the conference as a whole is great. It is a banging playlist. I hope you'll join. It's going to be really good. And then I actually want to turn it over to Emily for some CFD movement updates. And Serena, I'll answer your question in the chat.
Sure. So I just have a couple updates at the national level. So one is we are in communication with Fridays for Future, and there's a lot of planning around this kind of end the era arc on September 17th in New York City. And so I put the link for travel and logistics, and Helen has been doing like an insane job at William and Mary, getting a bunch of people to go up to New York. And so hopefully we're going to get a bunch of people who support carbon pricing altogether and be able to visibly advocate for that. And so the link for travel and logistics is in the document. And then we're working on an intro video to explain the carbon fee and dividend policy and the movement, and just like a really simple, just like can be easily dispersed everywhere. So because the main problem with the main reason we don't have carbon pricing is because like I feel like most people don't know about it. And so we're playing such a powerful role in getting the word out, especially to youth. And with the flyer design, once the video is created, we'll be redesigning the flyer to link people to the video. So it should be really easy to just like put the flyer up anywhere and just anyone can start learning about the carbon fee and dividend. And then Stanley did a really excellent job at putting together a CFD movie night, and that was very wholesome. And we watched a nature documentary, which was, Stanley, do you want to like share about briefly?
It had a very saddening scene in it where climate change was pushing walruses up into like the cliffs where they can't see really well. So when they like had to go and get food, they would just like fall off. And there were like hundreds of them that like die every year because of that. It was a very sad movie night moment.
It was very inspiring to keep doing what we're doing. And also at last, the CFD movement meeting that are now, we're doing joint meetings with the heat calls. So Philip gave a presentation on Biden declaring a climate emergency. Like that's a big thing that a lot of climate activists are advocating for. And Philip, I'm wondering, do you want to share just a little bit about just a summary of the main points?
Sure. Yeah. So, yeah, that's a bit pushing Biden to declare a climate emergency is a big thing that a lot of climate activists are trying to get to happen. And since CCL isn't advocating for that, I wanted to know more about that. So, after a good answer from Dana Nutritelli, I shared some of the things that were with that, but the main gist is that the things, there's nothing bad about declaring a climate emergency, but ultimately it's not the most effective way to reduce emissions when there are other things like permitting reform or getting the Inflation Reduction Act out to people that are better ways of really making a big impact.
Yeah, well said. And it's something we've been thinking about a lot as we've been in these climate activist spheres with other organizations. And yeah, those are all the updates, and we're just excited. Stephanie, thanks for like arranging us to be in the heat space. I think this is a really great structure that we're building together.
No, absolutely. Thanks for all of the movement and momentum that you all are building. It's really great to get to collaborate with you and be your home here at CCL. It's really been a privilege. So our final couple of announcements, if you haven't done this yet, we have a Google Calendar to try to make it as easy as possible to keep track of meetings. Of course, now that we have our CFD and heat calls happening together, there are fewer meetings to keep track of every month, but it is still helpful to have things on your calendar. So you can go ahead and add that Google Calendar to yours. Just click on the link and it'll ask you if you'd like to add that calendar to your Google Calendar. Definitely recommend doing that. I also wanted to share for our campus leaders and anybody else who's organizing on campus. I just received a box of 75 of these little books, the world's littlest book on climate, 10 facts in 10 minutes about CO2, which some of our regular chapters have been using for tabling events, and they really strongly endorse. We're going to also have some like CCL branded flyers ready to go for you to have like at your tabling events. So I have 75 of these and I cannot possibly use 75 of them. I got them for you. So if you would be interested in having a few of these for your campus's tabling activities, please let me know. The best thing is it's also available for free digital download. So you don't have to have like 100 of them to give all of them out. You can just get like 10 to have for tabling events to give to your leadership team, and then encourage people who come up to your table to download the digital copy. It's really cool, full of facts, and great graphs and illustrations for those of us who are more nerdily inclined. It's really good. So, and the very last thing I wanted to make sure everybody knew, internship applications, since the last time we met, they have gone live. If you are interested in interning with CCL or applying for a fellowship, please do by October 1st. You can find that at citizensclimatehighered.org/internship, or just, go to the link I'm about to put in the chat. I'm happy to stay on for a few more minutes. We are at time, but I know we haven't gotten a lot of time to connect with each other. So if you'd like to stay on and brainstorm, share any ideas, anything you're excited for the rest of the month of September and before we meet again in October, I'm happy to stay on for a little bit. But it was really great connecting with you all, and thank you for the great questions and engagement with Caleb and Anjali. They were really fantastic.